Okay, perfect. And holy shit, we are live. What's good, y'all? It's your girl Indah G in the house, back again with another episode of the Indah G Show, where educational and entertaining gets a little explicit. Full episodes are available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast. Episode clips are also available on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. PSA for any of you that are going to need this, there are going to be English closed captions that have been reviewed and revised by our team to ensure accuracy. And I guess let's just jump straight into it. This is literally a guest on my show today, you guys, that I couldn't even believe when she responded to my email and she was like, yeah, no, let's do it. I was like, I pinched myself. I was like, I gotta be dreaming. But
oh, really?
Yeah, no, dead ass, Miss Girl. I didn't even think that she was gonna respond to me. I thought she was gonna read my email and be like, who the fuck is this amateur? You know?
This weirdo.
This fucking weirdo. No, I need to tell everybody, like, when I reached out to her, I included a link of my LinkedIn profile just so that, like, I told her this is nothing like a scam or whatever, just to, like, make sure to give her the reassurance that, like, I'm a real person. I gave her my LinkedIn profile. I don't even know if you checked it out.
I did check it though.
See, it works, you guys. It works. But yeah, anyways, this is literally a guest. I feel like ini udah satu Indonesia udah kenal sih, ya. And you really don't need much of an introduction, but I mean, obviously, Miss GitaSav, how you doing, Miss Girl?
Hi. I'm doing well-ish. I mean, I got COVID, still positive, but I feel great. Yeah, I just woke up. I didn't have my breakfast. That's why I had banana.
Yeah, get that potassium, Miss Girl.
Yeah, but I'm good. I'm ready.
Okay, yeah. Did you test positive, like, right on the New Year?
No, it's like after I came back from New York. And then I tested it and I was like, I don't feel quite good. And then I tested, oh, shoot, positive. But that was like my first time catching COVID.
Oh, so like prior to that one, you were a COVID virgin. Yeah. Wow,
Yep.
That's impressive because, like, I got COVID back in 2021. Also, like, it's so funny to me, and, like, the irony isn't lost upon me that of all people, of all places, you went to New York, and of course you got COVID in New York.
Of course, the filthiest place on earth.
Quite literally. No, I don't even exaggerate when I tell people, like, New York metro rats are like the size of cats. Yeah. But anyways, and I mean, first of all, just thank you so much for being here on this show. Like, I really, really just appreciate this. And
no, but let me say this because, like, ada banyak banget yang invite gua ke podcast and I always said no. But when you asked me to do that, and I was like, I think I can, like, talk to this person, like, having, like, real conversation because our background is kind of similar. I mean, you're a diaspora, I'm a diaspora, you know what I mean?
Obviously, like, this is the first time. Well, this is not the first time that you and I have talked, but it's definitely the first time that we're filming together. You're coming over on my show. Definitely a lot of your audience members are also going to be, it's their first time probably even figuring out, like, oh, like, who is this Indah G person on the show? Maybe some of my audience members are not even familiar with who you are. So maybe let's just start it off with a basic introduction to just each other.
I'm Gita. I was born and raised in Indonesia, but I live in Germany since I was 18. So it's been 12 years now.
Oh.
And then what else? I'm a content creator. I'm also a book author, and I work in a fine chemical companies as well in Hamburg. I do many things because I just have so much time. So that's why. And energy, that's why.
Also, really interesting. I didn't know prior to just now that you are a published author, because so am I, actually. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the first thing that I did after graduating college, I wrote a book, more so out of necessity, out of my situation at that time, because I couldn't get a job. Nobody would hire me anywhere. So it was just like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm just going to write a book. Fuck it. Yeah.
And what is it about?
It's just basically, and links down below for anybody that might be interested, I guess. I also sell, like, physical copies here in Jakarta, but it's basically non-fiction. Like, it's just a recollection of my life growing up in the international school system, moving abroad to America, experiencing, like, culture shock, reverse culture shock, but also highlighting the experience of just being an international student. And it's not just my own experience. I managed to interview over 100 other internationals from all over the world, two prominent ones including U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth and Ronnie Chung. You know,
Rolling
from
Stone?
like Trevor, from the Trevor Noah show, the Daily Show with Trevor
What?
Noah. Yeah,
What? Yeah. The comedian.
the comedian, the Chinese guy. Yeah, I got him on. Yeah,
Sick.
I know. What was your book about?
How did you get him? Oh my god. So awesome.
Yeah, no, I completely reached out just randomly, but Tammy Duckworth, she went to GIS. So for those of you that are not familiar with my background, I guess like this is a good time for me to just put it in there. I grew up here. A lot of people always have the assumption that I grew up abroad. No, I grew up here. It's just I grew up in the international school system. I graduated out of GIS. And I know every time I say that, people look at me and they're like, oh, that's why. And then I lived for some time in LA. I moved to the US. I lived a bit over there, and then I came back over here back in 2020. Oh yeah, what was your book about?
My book was about similar like yours, like about like my life and
Mm-hmm.
my childhood and then growing up and then, like
Mm-hmm.
being this like person from public school, never been overseas before, and then suddenly had to move to Germany, and then also my experience living there
Yeah.
as a woman, as a young woman, hijabi, those kind of things.
Is this information that you'd be comfortable sharing? I guess where did you go to school? You just mentioned that it was like a public school.
Yeah, so I went to school like this dekat rumah gitu, di belakang rumah. It's called SDN Sukabumi Selatan 01 Pagi. For anybody from Jakarta Barat, from Kebonjeruk area. So that's where I grew up. Also, my mom and my dad still live there.
Yeah.
And then like SMP, I went to SMP 111. It's in Kemanggisan. Also West Jakarta. And then high school, I went to 78, SMA 78 Jakarta Barat as well. And then student college, I went to Berlin. Berlin Institute of Technology, TU Berlin.
I'm sure a lot of people have asked you, like, do you have plans on like staying in Germany, in Berlin, like long term?
Well, I mean, I used to live in Berlin for 9 years, and then since 2018, I moved because I got married to my husband, and then he's been living here the whole time as well, like me, like since 2011 for
Wifey
him.
material.
So I moved. I moved. I mean, I love Hamburg though. I love Berlin as well, but now I feel like Berlin is kind of like too chaotic to be like a place to live. That's why I was so glad that I moved.
Yeah.
And in terms of like planning, I don't know. That's why like the first time when I met you, right? I was like, why did you move back to Indonesia? I was like wondering why. I mean, you had I don't know if your life was comfortable or not there in the US, but I assume it was because like you had all of the freedom and you can do whatever you want. You can like really plan everything by yourself. But here in Indonesia, there's so much, like an outside voices you have to consider. So it's kind of annoying sometimes.
It
right?
really is. I will talk day and night about the trials and tribulations of not only being an Asian person, but being an Asian woman, especially. It is a different level of hell. But yeah, for me, moving back here to Indonesia, I'll be honest, like it definitely was not my choice. It was out of circumstances. It was really hard for international students to get sponsored. I don't know if that's something that you can speak to and experience being in Berlin. I know that Europe is usually a lot kinder to international students and foreigners wanting to come work in Europe in general.
Okay. I mean, here, as long as you can speak the language, you will get a job.
Right. Yeah.
At least that's my experience. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, in the US, it was just, I mean, long story short, it's like getting a sponsorship was very difficult. And also, it's just like me personally, like I'm an only child to a single mom. And so it's also the whole, the obligation of having to come back and taking care of your parent, also taking over the family business, which I kind of do on the side. I kind of help my mom out a little bit, even though this is my main career. So yeah, that is why I ended up coming back. It definitely wasn't my choice. I would have loved, I could have done a lot of other things in LA, that's for sure. But to be honest, I don't regret coming back here as well. And I think there is a conversation that needs to be had about how not all of us that have the privilege of going abroad and pursuing an education and a career abroad like you and me, at the same time, I don't think all of us should leave. I think some of us need to come back because it begs the question of if all of the smart, talented, educated people leave, what's going to be left of this place, right?
I agree to a certain extent. At the same time, I feel like our government or our country in general, they're not really good at taking care of us, like young people, giving us opportunity, I mean, we always felt like left out. For example, like we have, like you said, we have so many young people that are so smart, you know, like they know what they want and whatever. They have so much plan. And then the country will be like, yeah, but we can do only this much. We cannot really support you. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
absolutely.
I feel like for people, young people especially, who have this like progressive mind, it's kind of hard living in Indonesia, to be completely honest. Unless it's Jakarta, maybe it's a different story. Tapi kalau in other cities in Indonesia, it is a little bit hard because like people kind of pressure you to like think in a certain way, and if they see you as kind of like this weirdo, kind of like, oh, beda banget sih.
Yeah.
You know, they will kind of like, lu jangan
bully
kayak
you
gitu,
a little
ini
bit.
nggak sesuai. Exactly.
Yeah. No, it's definitely individualism versus collectivism, right? Like it's part of it's one of the negative sides of growing up in a collectivistic society. There is this heightened pressure for homogeneity across the board. Like you just always have to be the same, always, and abide by the same morals and values and worldviews and everything. And yeah, I had this conversation with a friend just because very recently, I'm sure you heard the news about the Peter. How do you say it? RUUKP? RUUKP? KUHP. No, sorry. The criminal laws that have just been placed. Like, I'm sure we don't have to get into it, right? But I'm sure people are familiar. And I was having this conversation in the car with two of my girlfriends because I was basically saying, like, I think, and I know, I don't know how some of my viewers are gonna take this, but in 5 to 10 years, and I told my mom this too, it's like, I don't think I want to live here. You know, just because I had that want, even though coming back to Indonesia was something that was necessary due to my situation of not getting sponsorship and all that. There was also, I promise, like there was also that genuine want for me to come back and to give back to the community that raised me, right? And to bring back a little bit of what we have experienced like in the outside world, like to bring it back a little bit of that here in Indonesia. There was a genuine want for me to want to come back to Indonesia and change the world, but it's also the unfortunate truth of, like what you said, the government not being able to support young people like you and me that want to do that.
Gue tuh sering banget merasa kayak di guilt trip gitu loh, kayak you know what, kenapa sih lo decide untuk di luar negeri, you know, like you can build the country and everything, as if like it was my choice to be, you know what I mean, like dude, if I could, it's just like I didn't choose to be an Indonesian. You know what I mean? Even like thinking to give back itu buat gue udah like something, you should appreciate it, you know? Like gue bisa aja kayak completely just like whatever, I will change my warga negaraan and everything, but I didn't do that because I still want to give back and everything. I still think about my country. Tapi kayak the whole guilt tripping yang I just cannot stand, you know what I mean? Kayak terus at the same time, like I said, gue merasa those responsibilities just like lumped to me, like on my shoulder, and I'm just this individual who's trying to survive. You know what I mean?
Yes, no, I understand exactly what you mean. I think as international students, kids like me that grew up in the international school system, and we're kind of like, we kind of have this pressure put on top of our shoulders, especially because we're heralded as like being the privileged of the, like the utmost privileged of the privileged, you know what I mean? So it's like with a lot of privilege comes a lot of great responsibility as well. And I guess people, they put that expectation on
Shout
you,
out
like,
Uncle Ben.
Yeah. And it's like they put that pressure on you of like, just because you come from a place of privilege that you should want to give back. I agree, you should want to give back, but the reality is people are not obligated to. You know what I mean? Like at the same time, like me wanting to come back to Indonesia, like at least half of it was a ikhlas. It was a genuine want for me. I can't force other people to do that. I can't force you to do that if that's not a genuine want for you. And also, it's also the saying like you can't take care of other people if you can't first take care of yourself. So it's also just like you got to think about putting yourself first and your life first before sacrificing yourself, your dreams, your ambitions, your life for the sake of community or family.
I ask my other diaspora friends, you know, like that's coming from different countries, ada nggak sih negara lo yang kayak nyuruh lo, like pressuring you to go back and to give back and everything to the society, to the community that you grew up with? Terus mereka kayak, enggak kok, nobody is pressuring me to go back to my home country. You know, I'm here because I want to find a better life. You know what I mean? Kenapa gue harus
Yeah.
go back? That's what they
Yeah.
said.
No, that's very true. A lot of my, especially like my foreigner friends that come here to Indonesia, like they always comment on the extent of Indonesian patriotism and Indonesian, I don't know if this is the right word, like nationalism, like that pride for country. But I feel like it's good to have pride for country, but a lot of Indonesians, they misplace that. That pride is sort of misdirected and redirected into in a very negative way, where it's like, it's almost performative patriotism in a way, and it's also patriotism that's like, gimana ya, like gaslighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even like it does the opposite, you know, like instead of like fueling this fire of patriotism, it makes you not want to go back and don't want to deal with it. Like, oh, just leave me alone. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Let's be honest. Indonesian netizen is like crazy. They can be really crazy sometimes.
Oh
like, you
my
know.
god. Yeah, no, and you know all about that. The shit that
Exactly.
Indonesian internet has said about you. Of course I do my digging. The shit that Indonesian internet has said about you, written articles about you and shit. I'm like,
They're
people
obsessed. Obsessed is
obsessed.
understatement.
Upset,
Yeah.
deranged. But I mean, yeah, that's what we're gonna talk about today. So I guess let's dive straight into it. So first of all, I do want to say this. I think you and I are very. I keep telling people. Well, I was telling Peter the other day. Okay, I think you and I are very. This is very funny to me because when I was telling some people that, oh, I'm about to shoot with GitaSav, and a lot of people were like, oh, okay, like so you've talked to her, like what is she like? And it's very funny to me. I keep telling people that like Gita is basically the hijabi Muslima version of me, except also introverted. Because I think you and I are very similar, like not even just in terms of like political views and opinions, but also having like a passion for education. Obviously, like that's what we do with the bulk of our content creating. I want to focus on religious and educational / social upbringing. Now, this is where I think this is really interesting and tying into why I asked you where you went to school and your academic background. From a third person outside looking in point of view, I can see how to so many people, you're like the black sheep. Like you're a very rare and interesting case because like if we're judging solely from like the sort of background that you come from, right? Being an Indonesian, being born and raised in Indonesia, going to a public school in Indonesia, being a millennial, hijabi, Muslim, right? I feel like it's fair to say that nobody would expect somebody like you to have the political stances and worldviews that you do. Like you and I politically, we're very, very similar. But people look at me and like they know my background and like how I was raised, Western education and everything. And so they're like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. But for you, it's like, wow, that is such a rarity. So I want to know, like, how did you get here?
That's an interesting question. I ask myself the same question too. But tapi kayak I feel like my existence shows that Muslim comes in like different shape and sizes. Kayak I feel like a lot of people from Indonesia, because like I got a lot of shit for being me, you know, having like this political stance, having this political views and everything. Then a lot of people were telling me like, lo tuh pakai jilbab, lo tuh Muslim, you're not supposed to be like this. But I was like, I can be whatever I want and I still be a Muslim, you know, because like I can have different identities and all the identities I have, everything is valid and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it doesn't have to like, you know what I mean? So, and then why I got here, I think it's because I decided to move to Germany. I think that's the key point right there, because like I was so glad that I moved in such a young age, because I got the chance to embark in my own journey, like having like my own journey, finding myself, finding the best version of myself, like finding my identity so that I can be as authentic as possible. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I stayed in Indonesia. Like I said previously in the beginning, in Indonesia, there were so many outside voices that can like affect you. They can like have influence on you, and you know, there's so many conditioning. I feel like if you live in Indonesia, you live with your parents, you live in a society that is like religious conservative or whatever, there's so much dogma that does not allow you to be yourself.
Yes.
Makanya pas gue pindah ke Germany, gue tuh bener-bener trying so hard to integrate and trying so hard to have like a diverse social sphere. Karena di Indonesia I didn't have it. Kayak teman-teman gue literally, they're just like regular people, you know, Islam banyak, some Christian, some Catholic, some Buddhist. Tapi it's not as diverse as here. And here, I get to find like different people with different backstories. And of course, it changed my perspective.
And so it was like, did you grow up mostly like leaning towards like the conservative side? Like,
yeah. I mean, like my parents, like my families, they're like typical Indonesian Islamic family. So I come from like Sumatra family. So before, I mean, like now the conservatism in Indonesia is also heavily influenced by politics, right? Before, I grew up in the 90s, like early 2000. The politics was not so much like now, where it's like literal identity politics, where you just like said, I'm a Muslim, so vote for me. It didn't work that way before. Jadi kayak, we were not that conservative, but we've been practicing Muslim our whole life. Nah sekarang because of this political situation in Indonesia, of course, like my parents became more and more conservative, kayak typical conservative yang they mix like both politics and religion and everything. Tapi kayak gue, thank God I moved before all of the things happened to me, so I can detach myself from that.
That's very interesting. So, and if you don't want to answer this, if this is too personal, that is totally fine. We can admit this. But I'm assuming then that there was a lot of pushback from family and friends that you grew up with once it kind of came out in the open that like, oh yeah, I have all of these like very progressive and liberal worldviews and opinions.
Yes, especially from my mother, karena dia itu just like typical conservative boomer Indonesian gitu yang kayak, wah no, LGBTQIA nggak boleh, itu tertera di Quran. Well, I can understand where she's coming from. Exactly, I can understand where she's coming from.
Of course.
At the same time, balik lagi gitu, I have my own views. I have my own interpretation of what Islam is. Because at the end of the day, religion and everything is ideology, right?
Yes.
And ideology itu kayak dekat sekali dengan personal interpretation, and personal interpretation depends on your experiences, your everything, your upbringing and everything. So I don't see any reasons why I should be like ashamed. Kayak orang-orang di internet bilang gue kayak, oh my god Gita, you're not a real Muslim, you should be ashamed of yourself gitu. Lu ngebikin nama Islam itu jadi buruk because of your views. And I was like, no dude, you don't understand because you're not me. You're not in my shoes, so you don't understand how I think and how I interpret Islam for me. You know what I mean?
Yes. And first of all, no, if anything, I gotta tell you this, like, at least in my opinion, like, you are a good representation of what and how Islam should be. I grew up with a lot of Muslims that are just like you, and I'm very, very glad that that's been my exposure to Islam. And I do want to say this, back again to the whole thing about how religion is ideology and interpretation, right? This is just my personal opinion. You guys can disagree if you want. It's just my personal opinion that I've been very. I grew up in a very non-religious household, and but I also grew up in a very religiously diverse upbringing my entire life. And one of the best takeaways for me in terms of like how I view religion and spirituality, more so religion, that religion is for you to judge yourself. You know, like it's not for you to judge others. Religion is for you to decide how you want to live your own life, and not for you to dictate other people how they should be living their lives based off of what you think. Like even amongst Muslims, or even amongst Christians and Catholics and even Buddhists like me, right? Like you can bring in two Muslims, you can bring in two Catholics, like those two are not going to agree on all of the same things. Like they're not going to view their respective religions in the same way, because so much of it is interpretation. And it almost feels like every time I bring that up, or you bring that up, somebody else brings that up on Indonesian internet, everybody gets their panties up in a twist and they get so fucking angry about it, when it's like,
yeah,
but that is how it should be.
I think like so many people who get worked up because of religion, it comes from a place of insecurity. I believe that. Karena I don't know, I feel like if you're so secure about your faith and your belief to God and your relationship with God and everything, even like whatever people are doing with you and they're not really harming you, you'll be unbothered, you know, like you'll be like, okay, I'm gonna be in peace. I'm just gonna do my own thing. I'm not gonna be like bully this person because this person has a different interpretation than me. So I feel like there's so many people who bully others because of religion and everything because they themselves are insecure about it. So that's why when they're bullying other people, they're projecting their insecurity. They're kind of like telling themselves at the same time, like, no, I'm the right one. You're wrong.
Yes.
I'm the right one. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, that's called touting their moral superiority. I made up a term for it, fragile spirituality. Because
that's true. I completely agree with you.
It's like fragile masculinity, but it's just spirituality. It's like you have fragile spirituality. Go talk to God. Don't go talk to me. Go talk to God. You know?
Yeah. And also, like, I feel like so many people, because I'm Muslim, I see a lot of this behavior coming from Muslim communities. Kayak mereka tuh takut banget kalau ada like a nuanced conversation about religion or about like anything that has even like the smallest thing that yang hubungannya sama agama gitu. They want everything to be black and white karena when it becomes a bit gray, a bit like, oh ini gimana nih, just the whole thing itu crumble gitu loh buat dia. And dan akhirnya itu semua jadi manifestasi ke itu tadi, kayak they feel the need to bully others, to like be angry about it gitu-gitu.
Exactly. I'm very interested to hear more about, I guess, religion and how religion played a part in your household. So I'm personally, for all of my viewers and also for all of your viewers, just to like, I guess, get to know me a little bit. So I identify as agnostic. I know that's like the tabooest of all taboos here in Indonesia, I feel. But I'm personally agnostic, although legally on my KTP, I'm Buddhist. And even though I personally identify as agnostic, I did grow up with Buddhism in the household because of my mom, and she's a pretty devout Buddhist and everything. We do Buddhist traditions and rituals and all that stuff at home. But, Buddhism is a little bit different. Overall, I would say, like, I grew up in a very non-religious household, which definitely... people like me that grew up in very non-religious households, like we grow up with very different, I guess, worldviews, and like just perception and understandings of like religion as a concept in general. I guess this is very open-ended. Like, what was your household like? And did you go to a religious school as well by any chance?
No, I didn't go to a religious school. I went to like public school my whole life. Jadi dari TK bahkan I went to this like kindergartennya Bulog. And then SD juga public school, SMP public school, SMA public school. So I never went to like any madrasah atau gimana. The only religious school I went to was like ke guru ngaji after school, but that's about it. Atau misalnya guru ngaji datang ke rumah, karena my mom is also conservative and she always like emphasize at least once in your life, lu tuh harus hatam Quran, you know. So that's what I did. Jadi kayak gue beberapa kali hatam Quran and everything.
What does that mean? I'm sorry.
So you read the whole Quran, 30 juz, and then when you're finished, you read again, those kind of things. So that's what hatam Quran means. Dan dulu pas, if you're a kid, like a Muslim kid, hatam Quran is something like, oh yeah, I achieved something, I did something, you know, it was some kind of a big deal.
So an accomplishment.
And then my mom... Exactly. And my mom also like told me before I decided to go to Germany, dia juga kayak, kalau Gita nggak hatam Quran nggak boleh ke Jerman. So that's what she said too. Jadi kayak before ke luar negeri, I had to do the hatam Quran again. So my mom, because she's a boomer. She was born in the 60s. Of course, you know, religion became like a pretty essential part of her life. My father, before not so much, but now because he got older, so he became more religious. Tapi itu kayak naturally, you know, some people are like that, especially in Indonesia.
Yes.
Tapi kalau gua pribadi, yes, and my sister and I, itu my mom always told us kayak harus sholat 5 times a day, nggak boleh skip anything. Puasa, of course, you know. Yeah, we were pretty religious. We're practicing Muslims, even like until now. My mom, like I said, even like she's even more into conservative Islam now. Yeah, see, so religion becomes a really big part for our family for sure.
And I mean, I hope you don't mind me asking this, but it's like, hatam Quran, rajin sholat, and like living your life. I'm assuming very strictly, like there was that expectation for you to live very strictly in accordance to Islamic principles and practices. But was that? I mean, not to sound some type of way or whatever, but like, was it genuine for you, or was it because, like, to put it crassly, it was an expectation and pressure that came from family that you did it?
This is an interesting question, karena if you were to ask me when I was a kid, of course I didn't understand those kind of things, I was just like, I just did what I was told to do, kayak sholat, sholat, sholat. And of course, typical Indonesian families where you don't ask questions, like Asian parents, you don't ask them questions,
Yep.
and they won't give you any kind of like explanations kayak, jadi Tuhan tuh ini. Mungkin like nowadays, those millennial parents, mereka lebih progresif ya gitu. Mereka mau lebih explain to their kids kalau kidsnya udah nanya kayak those difficult questions. Tapi kayak di zaman gue dulu, we didn't ask questions. Terus kayak parents juga, when we wanted to ask questions, mereka kayak langsung shut it down, kayak udah lakuin aja, those kind of things. So if you were to ask me if it's coming from like a genuine place, I honestly don't know. Maybe it was like conditioned to me, and then it turns into a genuine place. But at first, I don't think it was genuine because like kids don't understand.
Yes, children are too young to understand the concept of free will.
Yes. It was conditioning for me. It was, and maybe like for other people as well.
Well, but now obviously, like, you are an adult. You are I mean, not to put words in your mouth or whatever, but it's just an assumption that I'm making, like, based off of like what I know about you. But like, you're an adult now, and you have free will, right? So, and like, you make the conscious decision to be a practicing Muslimah, to abide by Islamic practices and principles. Now, where you are at now, do you regret that was your introduction to Islam, like as a child, that it was kind of like conditioned and like kind of shoved down your throat?
Regret, I'm not sure. I never thought about it, but I did ask myself, and also wondering what my life would be kalau religion was not a big part of my household. What kind of person I would be. Karena if we're talking about like religion, terus kayak terutama among like religious people, right? Like or Muslim community, ada banyak orang-orang yang melihat tuh agama tuh sebagai kayak bener-bener like those moral compass. Padahal in my opinion, you don't need agama to be a good person. Like being a good person, just being a good person. You know what I mean? You don't need anything.
Gita,
I think you can relate to it.
Yes. And also likewise, like the same way that you have contemplated of what my life and what I would be like, alternatively, if like I hadn't grown up in such a religious household, like I've also had that curiosity of like, what would I be like, and what would my life be like if I did grow up in a religious household? Because for me, it's the complete opposite. Like I'm not even shitting with y'all right now. Like I feel like up until maybe very recently, like my mom's older and everything, and it's very true, like for some reason in Indonesia, when people get old, they become more religious. Maybe it's because like, oh, my time is coming up, I need to bertobat or something. Like ya kan. But I'm not even shitting with y'all. Like I don't even think I've really heard the word God, or like God being acknowledged in the household. Like that was never even a thing, like up until maybe like 2 to 3 years ago. You know what I mean? So it's just I grew up in like I am the most like in terms of like my upbringing as an Indonesian, like I am the most non-religiously brought up Indonesian that I actually know. And also I wanted to throw in there, Gita, the amount of people that have asked me. I had this one Malaysian Muslimah best friend, like back in high school. Sweet girl, God bless her soul. But she, one time, I opened up to her about me being agnostic. And she was like, oh, what does that mean? Because also, here's the other problem here in Indonesia. Too many Indonesians, they don't know the difference between agnostic and atheist. Beda, jauh beda. But go look it up. Anyways, I told my friend I'm agnostic, and she literally deadass looked at me and she was like, wait, so then how are you a good person? And I was like, what do you mean? And then she's like, well, okay, but if you don't have religion and you don't believe in God, then how do you have morals?
Yeah.
And I just, you know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, babe, I love you. But it's like, that is, you don't, it's also, a lot of people don't want to hear this, but even a lot of people that do believe in God and are religious, even they're not good people. Even they're morally corrupt. Even they don't have ethics.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
yeah.
if you're evil, you're evil, regardless if you're Muslim or Christian or
Mm.
Buddhist. If you're evil, you're evil. But
Mhm.
and vice versa, I don't feel
Mhm.
like you need religion to be a good person.
Mhm.
Soalnya kayak ada banyak orang yang kayak lihat tuh dia ateis, dia
Mm.
agnostic and everything. Nanti dia kayak I don't know kalau apa di YouTube ini bakal di ban atau everything. Tapi kayak nanti dia doing like this really vile stuff. Nanti dia kayak perkosa orang, bunuh orang.
Mm.
That's not really the case. Sometimes people who don't believe in God or who believe in God tapi nggak believe in any religious institution.
Mhm.
Some of them
Yes.
are really the nicest people ever gitu.
Yes.
Mereka adalah orang-orang yang sangat-sangat empati banget sama orang lain, because
Yes, absolutely.
they see other people not from like their religious identity,
Mhm.
sehingga dia tuh bisa relate. They just see people
Mhm.
as people, and they feel like there is my responsibility as a human being to help others,
Exactly.
And point
Exactly.
blank, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a lot of contention with the way that my mom brought me up. I mean, my viewers, my followers know I don't necessarily have the best relationship with my mother, but I will give credit where credit is due. The one thing that I really loved about how my mom raised me was this open-minded attitude towards religion and like this understanding of how every religion is really just the same. And I know even saying that a lot of people are going to be getting mad, and I mean, okay, whatever, I guess, but
Yeah,
every
because I
religion
got
is
bullied
just the
saying the
same.
same thing.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I guess I'm gonna about to get bullied as well. Sure. But it really it's the whole like different paths leading to the same destination. It's really like all it is. And something I really like. My mom, she was talking to me about how it ties in a lot to performative religiousness in Indonesia, like religious narcissism. Actually, the Jakarta Post, they made an article about that. I'm gonna put the link down below and put a screenshot up real quick. But my mom, she was telling me about how, all of these like people, like they go rajin-rajin pergi ke church, rajin-rajin pergi ke mosque, and like, they do all of these like performative stuff to make themselves look like they're good Christians, they're good Muslims, they're good Buddhists and Hindus even. But it's like but then they get out of church or they get out of the mosque, when no one is looking, suddenly it's like, oh, let me just talk shit about this person. Oh, let me just walk past the, hungry, starving, homeless person that was begging me for money or for food. You know what I mean? So it's like my mom always emphasized to me being a good person in general. Like it's not about the things that you do when other people are watching. It's not it's not diligently going to church. It's not diligently reading the Bible or the Quran. It's the stuff that you do outside of all of those duties.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Even like a lot of people who bullied me previously because like I said Qatar homophobic and everything, a lot of them mereka itu mentioning Muslim, mentioning God and everything in the same sentence with like them condemning me dan nyuruh gue masuk neraka dan kayak saying all of this disgusting and vile stuff. Like, can you imagine how confused they are like morally?
It's a lot of double standards and it's a lot of hypocrisy. We're going to be talking about the whole LGBT Qatar thing that happened because actually that was how more recently like I came to know about you, is because like you made such a huge controversy with that one, but we'll get to that in a little bit. I don't know if anyone's ever asked you this. And I don't know if you've ever even entertained the possibility of like, let's say, because we're going to also talk about the whole child-free thing in a little bit, but let's say you do have a child. Let's just say you and your husband is also Muslim, right?
Yeah, he was a Christian. He's a Muslim convert.
Love that. But is he a practicing Muslim, may I know?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
He was a really practicing Christian before, though. He was like really devout Christian.
The question being, if y'all have a child and they choose to not want to become Muslims, they don't want to practice Islam. You have a daughter, she doesn't want to wear the hijab ever. Don't even want to identify themselves as Muslims. They want to be atheists. How would you react to that?
You know what? I don't care about it. Like, seriously, for me, I'm in a place right now where I feel like religion, hijab, and everything, it's so personal. Like, even me, if I were a parent, I wouldn't tell my kids, like, I wouldn't put like a seed, even like a thought to my kid that lo harus begini, lo harus begini, lo harus kayak begini. I don't want to condition them because I've been conditioned my whole life and I know how that did to me. I don't want to do that to another person. Like, I have gue punya ponakan sekarang because like my sister has a baby.
Oh.
I have been planning like with my husband, and we've been talking about it. I mean, he's not my kid, right? But we've been talking and everything. And I was like, I'm not going to tell him what to do. I'm not going to pressure him to do anything. He just needs to be his own person.
Period. No, and that's exactly. In an ideal world, more people would be like that with their children, but alas. And I mean, so I guess in brief, like, what would you say your relationship with Islam is like? It's very unfortunate. I think, like, maybe, I mean, not to put words in your mouth, but then it just kind of seems like you had a bit of like not the most ideal introduction to Islam as a child, because it was a lot of like conditioning and everything. But what's your relationship with Islam now as a fully conscious, free-willed adult?
Yeah, now it's just like me finding peace through Islam. And a lot of people were like really confused about it because like, kok bisa sih Git, you're a Muslim and there's so many things that you're not supposed to do but you do it berdasarkan mereka gitu kan. So in Quran, it is this but you're doing the opposite and everything, itu kan dosa. For me, it's like, I'm finding peace and I find it in Islam and that's it. And that's it.
And again, it's a conversation of how different people from every single religion out there and like across all of the religious texts, like people are going to read the same text and have different interpretations of what the text is trying to say. Okay, so it's just, again, like I mean,
look at people in Afghanistan, right? Look at the Taliban. Exactly. They're reading the same scripture, same text, but they came up with this really a lot of bullshit, right? They're telling the woman not to go to school karena kayak, ya Islam kan nyuruhnya perempuan untuk di rumah aja. I mean, I'm a Muslim as well. I read the same Quran. I don't agree with that.
Remember what I posted on my Instagram story, the one that I tagged you in, and basically it was a conversation of like, there was this one of my followers on Instagram, and then they DM'd me. They're an ex-Muslim. They went to a pasantren, I suppose, and then they were basically telling me about how like you take it from me, Indah, Islam is not a religion of peace, and Islam is just basically like talking very negatively about Islam as a religion, and also bringing up the point about, I think it was like something along with like women's rights and everything. And I want to really quickly just mention something about that, right? Number one, I find it very hypocritical. And it pisses me off to no end how a lot of Indonesian men, and of course Indonesia is a Muslim majority country, and so it's a lot of Indonesian Muslim men that will be out here saying, cewek tuh nggak usah sekolah terlalu tinggi-tinggi, nanti nggak nurut lah, nanti apalah, you know what I mean? It's like a lot of that fragile masculinity coming out, and they always justify and try to validate that under the guise of, because it's in religion, it's in the Quran, it's in the scripture. No, it is not. I know I'm not Muslim, so I'm treading very carefully here with what I'm saying, but I know this to the T. All of my Muslim friends, I did my research online. There is nothing in the Quran that says that women can go to school, women can be educated. In fact, it actually says the opposite. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. That in the Quran, it is literally a religious mandate for Muslim men and women to pursue education to the highest degree that they can achieve it at.
Yeah, I mean, common sense aja kan. How come that you see a woman and you see a woman as a human being, terus kayak, nope, she's not able to go to school, she's not able to go to work because she's a woman. Like, who thinks like that? It's completely sick.
Yes, and it's not even in the religion, it's not even in the scripture. The Quran literally, like, not even really encourages. Again, it's a mandate, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a mandate for Muslim men and women to continue to pursue education, to pursue knowledge, and like to constantly do it. Also, fun fact for those of you that don't know this, right? The first ever university in the entire world was founded and operated by a Muslim woman. So,
yep, in Morocco.
Yep, exactly. I forgot the name, but yeah, it's definitely there. So I guess now let's move on to feminism, right? And I want to, first of all, I want to say this. I did like stalk you a little bit, of course, like we stalked each other and everything, and like I know, like I'm about to ask you who was your first example of feminism that you had in your life, and it occurred to me that it's already a privilege in and of itself that I think you and I are able to give examples of role models, like let's say maybe it's our mom, maybe it's our aunts, or like a teacher or a mentor or somebody that we had that feminist role model to look up to, like when we were little girls. Because I started thinking about how I think it, at least to me, it seems like it that most Indonesian girls and women never had that like us.
Yep. And can you imagine people like that? They don't have the alternative. They didn't know, like, throughout their whole life, they just thinking, oh yaudah cewek itu mesti kayak gini aja, we are the
Yes.
subordinate of men.
Yes.
Kita harus dengerin apa kata cowok. I don't know if I would want to live in that kind of circumstances. I could never imagine my life being like that. I mean, even now that me being like privileged enough, like, to know what feminism is, even I have so much outrage. Imagine if I didn't know anything about all of that. I would be like, oh shit, am I crazy right now?
But at the same time, it's like, because you and me, we are educated about this, and that's why we have so much rage. And you know the saying, ignorance is bliss. Ignorance really is bliss. And so, but okay, who was your first example of feminism? Like feminist role model?
It's just like my mom, like my mom, I told you, she's a conservative boomer, typical boomer Indonesian. Tapi kayak at the same time, she's a complex person. Like every one of us also, like we're complex people, complicated. Nah, dia tuh juga kayak planted the seeds of like equality, the values of equality, perempuan, Gita. I mean, a lot of my friends were telling me, ya nih, gue tuh disuruh cepet-cepet nikah sama nyokap gue, sama orang tua gue. My mom, she did the opposite. Dia malah kayak, jangan nikah dulu, kerja dulu, gini-gini dulu segala macem. And she just like created this whole scenario, the worst case scenario, which also happened in a lot of people, bahwa kayak perempuannya itu nggak sekolah, perempuannya nggak punya safety net buat dia sendiri, and then
financial
terus
independence.
Perempuannya exactly, terus perempuannya punya anak, and then suddenly the guys, dia kayak cabut aja, terus selingkuh and whatever, and it happened a lot in so many people's life. Dan nyokap gue kayak completely telling me, Gita, don't let that happen to you. The only thing that you can do is just, you have to like be independent.
Yeah, atau amit-amit ya, kayak like this has also happened, like your husband passes away.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Exactly.
Terus suddenly kita nggak bisa apa-apa, kayak, oh shit, I don't have anybody to depend on it.
I think for a lot of people, it's usually starts at home. It starts with your mom.
Yeah. And also like my aunt, I have an aunt. She's a really cool person. Like she's almost as old as my mom. She's like only like 2-3 years younger. Terus the whole life, she was like my example, like, oh, ternyata perempuan itu bisa have fun although you're kind of old, because like my mom, she has 2 kids, me and my sister, then I see her, I mean, like, good for her, right? But she contributes so much of her time and energy and basically her life for her kids. Then she didn't even like have fun anymore. She didn't like go out with her friends anymore because of her kids. Like she dedicated everything to her kids. Terus my aunt, on the other hand, she doesn't get married, she doesn't have kids, dan dia tuh kerjanya kayak naik gunung, terus tiap minggu kayak ke rumah temennya, terus kayak,
oh bitch, that's fun.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, dude,
live your life, girl.
Exactly. That's why she showed me that there is like another life that I can have as a woman.
Yes, besides the traditional roles of like childbearing and like, like being a stay-at-home wife or stay-at-home mom and all that. Yeah, no, respect. I fuck with that. I want to talk about how I think for a lot of non-Muslims especially, but I feel even for a lot of Muslims themselves, a lot of people just tend to hold this perception that Islam as a religion is inherently antithetical to feminism. And definitely, and you know this living in Germany, living in the West, it's certainly been branded that way by Western media. They kind of paint Islam as this like really restrictive and unforgiving religion. And especially if we're talking about women's rights, right? Like it has this bad rep of being very like oppressive and sexist and misogynistic towards women.
That's what white people do.
yeah. Exactly. Like, but in your opinion, I want to get your opinion on this. Like, do you, as a Muslima, and like having had, like, you've read the Quran multiple times and all that. Like, do you think that that's true of Islam as a religion?
Well, like we talked about before, right? It really depends on the interpretation. At the same time, I cannot deny that there are people who do oppress women, especially by using religion. Like, look at what happened to Iran right now. So many people are protesting. I think it's been months. Then the regime, literally, they call themselves Islamic regime. They berdasarkan kata mereka, they were trying to imply like Islamic value to the countries. Mereka oppressing perempuan, They told women to cover their hair. Terus perempuan nggak boleh kan even showing even one strand of hair. Terus sekarang mereka the protest erupted. Terus kayak mereka trying to do the most vile stuff. You know, a lot of people were killed because of it because they did protest. So there are a lot of there are a lot of truth to that. But again, it is not because the Islam itself. It's because of these vile interpretation that people coming up with. And they're just using that to harm other people.
Right. I'm curious, how did Islam teach you how to be a feminist?
Because I believe that Islam, Islam is trying to teach equality to its people. Kayak misalnya kayak sholat aja gitu kan. You can be like coming from the lowest economic background, tapi pas sholat we're all equal gitu. Kayak misalnya lu bisa miskin banget keluarga lu, tapi ketika sholat lu imamin even like bos-bos besar atau kayak presiden and everything. So in Islam tuh nggak dilihat gitu background lo apa, identitas lo apa gitu, and that's what I get from Islam gitu. Regardless of who you are, it's about you and God.
And I guess you could also extrapolate that to fit into the context of gender equality as well.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that. When I think of feminism in Islam, and this is very ironic because a lot of people always cite the hijab as an example of how Islam is not a feminist religion, that it's a very oppressive and restrictive because women are forced to cover up and all that type of stuff. But actually, I know this because I've talked to a lot of my Muslim friends. I've also just done my research online, and this is just my own opinion, that contrary to popular beliefs, the hijab is actually very feminist.
Yes, because it gives women a choices, especially like especially like when we talk about like the Western context, di mana kayak perempuan itu diobjektifikasi, kayak the more you're showing your skin kayak lebih di-celebrated kayak gitu. Tapi kayak Islam itu memberikan choice lain gitu buat perempuan. No, you don't have to do that. You can do the other way gitu. Jadi I guess like what I'm trying to say is about like choices. It's not about the hijab, whether it's oppressing or liberating. It's about like women are given choices, regardless. Yes. Dia mau cover, dia mau nggak cover, the choice is on women. They're the ones who taking control of it. Well, what I know is there is no compulsion in Islam. So there's no compulsory in religion. So you cannot just force someone if they don't want to, and period,
So what's your opinion on, I'm sure you've seen this a lot growing up in Indonesia, of little children, like I'm talking like toddlers, the ages of 2, 4, 6, I don't know why I'm doing even numbers, but very, very young toddler girls already wearing the hijab, and you know damn well that it's not because that they asked for it. Yeah.
I think I'm gonna get a lot of shits, but I disagree with that. I feel like ada beberapa like selebgram yang punya anak gitu, and terus anaknya dihijabin gitu-gitu segala macam. I mean, she's cute because they're babies. A lot of babies are cute, right? Tapi at the same time, I was like, why do you do that? Why are you trying to impose something that she doesn't understand yet gitu? Kayak,
exactly.
Does she understand already tentang kediriannya dia, tentang ketubuhannya dia, that now you're telling them to like cover your, you know what I mean? Like
I think I know what you mean, because I have thought about this as well, of just kind of like it's more so because the whole purpose of a hijab, right? One of the purposes is to kind of like shield women from the horny gazes of corrupt men, right? So it's more so the implication of kind of like, why would you do that to a child? And it's sort of like this underhand sort of like inherent implication of kind of like even a child could be subjected to that, but also then thereby implying that a child should be objected to that.
And also more so, it's like she's so young. I don't think she even understands what being a woman means. Like what it, you know what I mean? Like even me as a 30-year-old, sometimes I was sometimes confused about like my gender identity, my sexual identity, like me being a woman and everything, and let alone a child. Dan gue nggak tahu apakah si orang tuanya even like explain to her that young, terus tiba-tiba udah disuruh untuk covering aja gitu loh. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like baju and everything, of course it ties to like her other identities as well yang dia tuh belum figuring out gitu. Kenapa kayak tiba-tiba you are pushing themselves to like you know, tuh tiba-tiba kayak udah gini aja gitu loh. Pakai jilbab aja, dipakai jilbab aja gitu loh.
Let's move on to probably one of your most controversial topics. Mitch, you gotta let the children know, let me know, like, what the fuck is up with all of this hate and backlash towards you about your hijab?
I don't know, girl. Like, I'm telling you, these people are obsessed, you know, like, but this is also like not just me, tapi ini tuh juga fenomena yang di Indonesia tuh udah beberapa tahun belakangan ini gitu loh. Like, dulu, if we see like a Muslim woman yang dia nggak berhijab, we're like, yeah, whatever, right? Kayak, yeah, okay, gitu. Kita nggak ada komen apa-apa gitu ke dia. Tapi sekarang, narasinya tuh jadi berubah gitu kan, kayak, aduh kasihan banget ya ini temen gue, tapi dia belum berjilbab, gimana ya cara ngasih taunya gitu. Nowadays, like, I don't know why, but there are more and more Muslims, at least in Indonesia, yang kayak, I don't know if they become more religious atau dia become more conservative gitu. Jadi kayak mereka lebih makin obses untuk ngebikin satu versi muslimah aja gitu loh, satu versi Islam aja gitu loh. Padahal balik lagi kan, ya like what we said before, Islam is an ideology and it depends on personal interpretation gitu. Tapi I see there are more and more people who are trying to just like take away this freedom, this individual freedom untuk kayak make the best version of Islam for themselves, yang akhirnya kena backlash gitu loh.
Yeah. No, and also like this is my confusion, right? Because I grew up in the international school system and then moved to the US and everything. There were a lot of Arabs. There are a lot of Arabs from the Arab world. A lot of them wear the hijab, and what I always notice is that everybody got different styles of hijabs.
Yep,
and
that's right. A lot of people wear turban. A lot of people wear niqab as well.
There's that Miss Gita girl. There is that one photo of you on your Instagram. The one where it's like you're kind of like to the side. I'll put it up on screen for those of you that are like wondering. But it's like the one where it's like it's your hijab, but it's like it's just your hair, but your neck and is shown, and like you're wearing I think like a black turtleneck or something like that. Do you know which photo I'm referring to?
I don't know.
It's a selfie
I
of
take
you.
too many pictures.
I love that about you. But no. There's this one photo of you, and I was like scrolling through the comments and everything. And again, it was like all about the neck and all about the chest and everything. My confusion is that particular style of hijab that you were wearing in that photo, itu sering banget. Like you see that so much even in the Arab world. So it's like I don't get like what is with all this backlash towards just that.
Yeah, I also don't understand either. Kayak
lehernya masih kelihatan, Kak. Cantik kakak, tapi maaf kok kelihatan lehernya.
Makin kesini, makin kesana. WK.
Kak Git, jilbabnya kenapa gak kayak dulu lagi? Sekarang agak terbuka gitu. Maaf kalau bikin tersinggung.
Aku juga ngefan banget sama Kak Gita sejak 2018. Agak shock, tapi aku sayang banget sama Kak Gita. Amin.
To be completely honest, Indo-Muslim community, they're getting scarier and scarier every year gitu. I see like our society is so heteronormative, cis-heteronormative, that we think everybody was cis-heteronormative, but that's not the case. Nah sekarang nih, kita udah being more woke, kita mencoba untuk elevating those voices of people who are not coming from cis-heteronormative community. Sekarang suddenly those like cis-heterosexual people like, kenapa sih lu kayak mencoba untuk making propaganda, untuk mencoba promoting like, bitch, no, they're not promoting, they've been there the whole time. Tapi selama ini mereka di silence aja gitu loh.